Wild Blue Yonder an instant hit or a palpable miss? Quite frankly, I haven't seen an episode polarize a fan base as much as this one for quite some time. And I'd like to explore that a little, so let's unravel the mystery of this much anticipated episode, exploring its highs, its lows, and its Wild Blue storyline as we go beyond the sofa. Wild Blue Yonder is the second of the Doctor Who anniversary specials, and it really feels like a mid-Moffat-era episode with some intrigue, a lot of puzzles, and some great character work. But not everybody has enjoyed this one, and it's interesting to take a look at why. But before we start, the elephant in the room. I know if I don't address this, I'll get comments about it anyway, so I might as well. And I'm likely going to get comments regardless, and this won't make anybody happy, but I don't want to talk about the casting of Isaac Newton. Look, I've spent all day reading through comments, seeing the conversations that have been going on, and you know what? They're all incredibly low resolution from both sides of the argument. You've got logical fallacies, you've got disingenuous positioning, you've got inconsistent talking points, and a tendency to paint any opponent as the worst person in the world, often unfairly. When people talk about toxicity in fandoms, it's conversations like this that are often to blame, and I'm not really interested in pursuing that at all. I really just want to talk about the episode and the writing, because those are the things that really engage me, you know. But I do want to mention other things about Newton, because this episode kicks off in 1666, and we briefly see Newton going to sit under a tree before the TARDIS crash lands on it. The inference here is that the Doctor has now made Newton discover gravity, but due to Newton's mishearing of what the Doctor and Donna are saying,
you can appreciate
the gravity of the situation.
He instead names this force
Gravity.
All to set up a pretty bad running joke that's picked up throughout the episode. Now, I have got a few problems with this. Firstly, Newton didn't just pluck the name gravity out of thin air. Gravity is a derivation from the Latin word gravitas, meaning weight, and since Newton could speak Latin, in fact, he was rather well known for it. He wrote the Principia in Latin because he wanted it to be available to all scholars worldwide, and Latin was a language that was almost universally understood between scholars and academics at the time. I can't square the circle here. I know too much about Newton to ever think that he would have settled on mavity when the Latin derivation that he did use would almost certainly have been at the front of his mind. It's stuff like this that actually takes me out of the story. And I'm not the only one who's asked, why was this scene necessary? What did it do other than setting up a bad joke? More importantly, perhaps, Doctor Who has always had a history of treating its historical characters with a little reverence, if not entirely accurately. Maybe the lesson here is that when you're dealing with a culturally or historically significant icon, one should probably not treat them as a cheap joke. Moving on, the bulk of this episode is set on a spaceship at the very edge of the universe. The Doctor and Donna are marooned when the TARDIS disappears because it detects a hostile presence. This was a really nice callback to the hostile action displacement system that was created by Bob Holmes for the season 6 serial, The Croutons. The Crotons. The croutons are the little things that float around in soup. Let's be really clear here. This is Doctor Who doing canon right. It's a nice, simple callback that doesn't require the audience to be familiar with the past history, but it's a nice nod to those of us who are. And what we get from here on out is basically David Tennant and Catherine Tate, but not in a bad way. I'm not sure how that would be in a bad way anyway. This episode plays out a lot like a Hinchcliffe episode, and it wouldn't feel out of place back in Tom Baker's era. As the Doctor's trying to work out what's going on and starting to reboot the ship, we encounter the shape-shifting aliens played by David Tennant and Catherine Tate. And it works really well. This offset allows for some exciting character moments, and we get to explore aspects of the Doctor and Donna from a different perspective. There's also a really nice callback to the Timeless Child and the Flux story arcs here.
It destroyed half the universe because of me.
And look, I wasn't a big fan of this arc at all, or much of the 13th Doctor's era, but this was done incredibly well, and it's really nice to see some causal impact on the Doctor for the decisions that he's made in the past. We see that he takes the blame, the responsibility for things, even when they're not his fault. And we see the pain and frustration when he has to confront it, thinking that he's found somebody that he can open up to, only to discover that they're one of the aliens. Did I say there's spoilers here, by the way? This is the turning point of our story. From here on, everything changes. The episode shifts from a curious exploration to a high-stakes game of survival and identity. And it's this twist that propels our adventure into uncharted territories, both literally and figuratively. As viewers, we're left wondering, how will they escape? Can they outsmart these cunning adversaries? It's this uncertainty, this thrill of the unknown that keeps us glued to our screens, eager to see what happens next. Wild Blue Yonder takes the Doctor and Donna on a journey that tests their wits, their friendship, and their very identity. But it's not all smooth sailing. There's a beautifully designed set here, and a lot of graphics work's gone into creating this episode, but a few elements do look a little clunky when finally realised. Several people have commented on the CGI elements not being quite up to scratch, whilst those elements, when paired with some of the character work, are likely meant to look a little bit uncanny valley. Some have pointed to things like the TARDIS materialising as being problematic. Personally, I didn't mind the special effects too much, and I couldn't really see what people were going on about with the TARDIS, but perhaps that's going to become more apparent on later rewatchings. Amidst the weird and wonderful, the episode stays true to its roots. There's a simplicity here, a straightforwardness that's refreshing. The Doctor and Donna use their wits to outsmart these alien threats, harkening back to the essence of Doctor Who: brains over brawn, wit over might.
She killed herself. But
What for? She hid her thoughts.
so we couldn't see.
And if you've been swept away with this episode so far, it might be confusing to see why some people are saying that they didn't like it. But I think I know what the reason is. Going into Wild Blue Yonder, there was a lot of speculation. But largely, it seems to me at least, the people who were speculating the most had the least problems with the episode. Yeah, some were disappointed that their fan theories didn't come true, but they're almost universally praising the episode regardless. Instead, I think that the answer's simpler. There are those who went into this episode and allowed it to just wash over them, just accepting what was happening along the way. And then there are those who went in asking questions, only to be given more questions as the story progressed.
Anyone home?
Now, neither of these reactions are wrong, but whether you emote or not will be directly connected with how many questions you're asking yourself. Alfred Hitchcock once said that an audience that's wondering is not an audience emoting. And if you're still asking yourself questions, you're less likely to engage with, the spooky atmosphere or the character development. That is, until those questions are answered. This is something that's very hard to achieve in writing murder mystery or puzzle box stories. And interestingly, I've seen a few people now have said they rewatched the episode and they enjoyed it an awful lot more the second time. Could this be because they weren't worried about the questions that the episode posed so much and allowed themselves to take the emotional journey instead? For my part, I really enjoyed the episode. It had a bit of a clunky start perhaps, but the bulk of the story was tightly scripted and had some lovely character moments. I have to admit to not finding it particularly scary, but I'm somebody who was basically brought up on horror films and I'm really not the best judge here. I can see that there probably were elements that would terrify normal members of the audience, And in many ways, Wild Blue Yonder feels a bit like a bridge. It connects the past with the present, weaving in elements of classic Doctor Who, whilst pushing the boundaries into new territories.
Rose is waiting.
I will get you home.
How?
The use of the shape-shifting aliens, the haunting setting at the edge of the universe, and the poignant moments of character reflection all contribute to its unique flavour in this series. The episode captures the essence of what makes the show so beloved, the blend of whimsy and danger, and the enduring power of friendship and intellect over brute force. And this is why we keep coming back to Doctor Who. It's the unexpected journeys, it's the memorable characters, the stories that challenge and entertain us. The standout moments in this episode for me were virtually all personal. The Doctor coming to terms with the flux, Donna facing death head on, the Doctor working out which Donna was the real Donna in a way that made the real Donna certain that he was the real Doctor. It was really lovely stuff. Perhaps we could have done without as much fan speculation, which actually pushed me off Twitter for a few days so that I wouldn't see any of it, but that's hardly the fault of the episode. I think this is going to be a slow burn for many. I think those who disliked it will eventually revisit it and find the charms that they didn't see the first time out.
Vampires, demons, and ghosts cannot cross a line of salt until they've counted every single grain.
I'm pretty sure that some of the 10 out of 10 scores from avid fans are also going to fade over time as the excitement of broadcast wanes. What we'll be left with is a really nice episode that blends elements of body horror into a haunted house mystery set in space. So what's next for the Doctor? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be a giggle. That's it for this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I hope that you'll come along and join me again the next time that we go Beyond the Sofa.